Hey there, this is your pal Pally, and welcome back to Git Er Raid. I'm back after a little hiatus to rebuild my Hunter's Raid group, and progression continues. So now, I present to you the heroic version of Dark Shaman in Siege of Orgrimmar. Time to turn your raid group upside down with some different roles and deal with the ironness of a new totem from the Shaman. For 10 man, you can do this fight in two ways. One would be the traditional normal way with 2 tanks and 2 to 3 healers. But one of the easier ways to accomplish this encounter is to bring 3 tanks and 3 healers. We ended up with only 2 healers, but some of that was due to the strength of our healers and the fact that we had a Ret Pally as our only remaining melee. Speaking of which, this fight really prefers ranged DPS. But as it's likely you'll be converting one of your melee to tank like we did, it'll probably work out. We'll talk the mechanic changes first, and then get into the 2 possible strategies. Basically, the Shamans gain a new totem very early on in the fight called the Rusted Iron Totem. They drop this at 95%, so it essentially means you have to deal with its mechanics the entire fight. Harum gains the Iron Tomb ability, and Chablis gains Iron Prison. Both of them are fairly straightforward to deal with, so let's get into it. Iron Tomb causes the ground to rumble under random players, and then after a second or two, it explodes with a tomb that will inflict a crap ton of damage on any player standing on it. Essentially, just watch the ground and move quickly, and this ability will cause you no issue. Iron Prison is the trickier one. It is a debuff that has a 1-minute duration. It does absolutely nothing until it expires. When it does expire, it will hit a player for 100% of their health as physical damage. What? That just means your raid member dies, doesn't it? Well, no, not exactly. It's physical damage, and it can be reduced by cooldowns and shields. So even if me as a hunter have no types of shields on me, my Ironhawk talent reduces the damage taken to 90% instead of 100%. Of course, I'd be dumb to just sit there and take that much damage. Hence, anyone who gets this debuff is encouraged to do one of 2 things. Pop a personal cooldown when it's almost expired, or alert your healers that you're about to take some serious damage. We had a Disc Priest nearby for those people getting the debuff. A strong enough shield was plenty to let these people survive Iron Prisons. So really the only trick here is remembering to deal with it when it's about to expire. As a hunter, I could mostly handle these myself with deterrence. Most everyone in my group had something they could use every minute or so it wasn't too big. Just remember to press that button. Oh, and one late note here. These debuffs come out about every 30 seconds, and 2 go out at the same time. So likely 4 will have it on them at a time, but remember, they only do damage when they expire. So that's really it. Dealing with the Iron Totem abilities. In case you haven't noticed already, I only have about half a raid group with me in this footage. And that's the strategy. You split the raid up and put 2 tanks and 1 to 2 healers with Harum, along with any melee you have, and then 1 tank, 1 healer, and any ranged stay with Chablis. Lots to explain here, but you take 2 tanks with Harum because of his stacking Froststorm Strike Nuke. You simply have to be able to taunt off. So that's the easy part. The rest is complicated, but boils down to separating the bosses far enough such that you only deal with their single set of abilities granted by the totems. So in the case of Harum, you deal with Iron Tombs, the Toxic Mist, Foul Stream, and finally the Ashen Walls. With Chablis, you get to deal with Toxic Storm, Foul Geyser Adds, Falling Ash, and of course the Iron Prisons. With enough distance between the bosses, you don't have to deal with this all at the same time. It really makes this fight very straightforward to learn for the 2 different teams. Everyone will have their little job and mechanic to deal with, and you just have to get used to it. For example, only one team will have to deal with the Iron Prisons, so you don't have to worry about a lot of people having to need personal cooldowns or learning the timing. Same with Iron Tombs. In fact, if you only have 1 healer in the Harum group, he'll only spawn 1 tomb instead of the 2, thereby giving you even more room to work with. There are many reasons to use this type of approach to this fight. It may feel a little bit like exploiting, but they give you this huge space for this encounter, so it works out. It is definitely possible to do this fight with both bosses together. In fact, I hear that way is quicker in terms of the length of the fight, due to multi-dotting and less tanks needed, but it's very risky in terms of the damage coming out. You could get a falling ash, plus prisons, plus toxic dots, resulting in a huge amount of possible instant deaths. Anywho, for the rest of the video, I'll just explain in more detail what each team has to deal with, and that should be good enough to get this thing done. But real quick, let's talk about the pull. Basically, you'll want to burn down the wolves as quickly as possible, just like in normal mode. But you might as well take the opportunity to cleave as much as possible. What you don't want to do is push the bosses below 85% and have them start spawning their abilities. You'll also have a few tombs before the groups separate, so try to put your ranged and healers in an out-of-the-way place so as to not muck up the space for the Chablis group. So we started with ranged and healers here by the auction house and dropped the first 2 set of tombs over here. Once the wolves are about dead, you can separate the groups with Harem going all the way up this path and Chablis staying in this big area. So let's start with Harem. You already know about the abilities of Harem, but of particular note over here is the Toxic Mist Dot. It hits hard. It's really bad in the last few seconds of the ticking since you gain that toxicity debuff that makes it hurt that much more. Depending on the group you send here, you'll have at least 2 tanks and a healer. If that's all you send, then the mist will end up on one of the tanks. That can be tricky, but it's manageable. If there are at least 2 non-tank classes nearby Harem, he will always choose those people as targets of the dot. For example, we had 2 DK tanks here, 1 Ret Pally, and our super awesome Druid healer, Malchior. The Pally and the Druid had the dot the entire time. But as I said, it's hitting hardest at the end of the debuff time. Thus, the Pally would be using Divine Protection as much as possible, and was spec'd into Hand of Purity to help out the Druid. In fact, Hand of Purity is so nice for this fight, that if you have any Pally in your group, you should always put them in the Harem group, regardless of spec. 90% damage reduction for dots against a hard-hitting dot? Hell yeah! Foulstream isn't too big of a deal, but you'll have to be careful if anyone has high stacks of toxicity, because Foulstream is also a big chunk of nature damage. As I said, iron tombs are popping out throughout this whole fight, so your healers here will have to get good at dodging them and placing them around. Lastly, the real trick for the tanks is to place the ashen walls in a nice line so you don't run out of room. In case you didn't know from normal mode, the wall will spawn directly from the shoulders of the active tank. So you'll spawn a wall and then move down a bit and have the previous wall at your back. You'll keep going over and over with a nice line of walls like this until the fight is over. The hope is that you don't run out of room and get too close to the Chablis group and mess their stuff up. But there should be plenty of time even if you are 3 tank and 3 healing. That's about it for the Harem group, so let's move over to Chablis. This group has pretty much the same duties as normal mode, but they just have to be that much more careful about the mechanics. The biggest killers of this group, besides the Iron Prisons, are Toxic Storms and the Geyser Slime Ads. The storms are just like normal mode, but they hurt a lot more. It's very easy to have the storm or tornado stray into your path, and you are dead before you know it. The storms actually can move, so be careful. The best way around this is to just watch your feet and keep moving the boss around the room. We tried to basically trail behind the boss as the tank moved them about the room clockwise. The ads from Foul Geyser are similarly deadly to your tank in Raid. You'll need to have your tank run away from the boss and the spawning ads, but not too far away from the healer. As you'll see here, the tank does a big circle ending close to the raid. This generally causes the ads to be grouped up and easily mowed down by AoE. And that's a huge priority for the DPS for sure. The ads need to continue to die as you pour damage into the boss. Now, the Falling Ash is an ability that Chablis uses, but it is something to be wary about for both groups. You only have to deal with it for half of the fight, but you'll want to call out when it is about to land for both groups. Its range will affect everyone, so you'll have to use some raid cooldowns and be prepared to keep people topped off. It's kind of frantic, but you just kind of have to get in a rhythm here. Kill slime ads, stay out of storms, and don't die to falling ash. Oh, and lust when the bosses lust themselves at 25% to finish them off as soon as possible. So, in summary, tanks of Harem taunt off for stacks and line up ashen walls. If you have Cardress, kite around like a madman, avoiding ads and storms. Healers watch for iron prisons and the toxic mist hard-hitting dot. And DPS avoid every bit of stuff on the ground and slaughter ads and boss alike. Here's the DPS and healing numbers for this kill so you can take a look for a comparison. Thanks for watching, and please comment, like, and or subscribe to the video if you found it helpful, and have a good one!